I don't want to be overly dramatic, and I don't mean to be overly dramatic. I understand that it is week 12, that there is still a good bit of football left in front of us, but it is starting to feel like the Pittsburgh Steelers season is truly in jeopardy, right? To me, it feels like the playoffs are becoming more and more of a pipe dream for the Steelers. I talked last week about how pivotal this game was in week 12, how pivotal Sunday was in Chicago. And the Steelers leave Chicago with a 31-28 loss to Caleb Williams' Bears team. And you look at that game and it stings for a lot of reason. It stings because you're now on the outside looking in of the playoff picture after week 12. It stings because a team that was 1-5 in the Baltimore Ravens is now ahead of you by a tiebreaker in the AFC North. But it also stings because it feels like if they had not been missing their starting quarterback, they would have probably escaped Chicago with a win. And it could have changed a lot of the outlook of where this team stands after week 12. You look at Sunday's game, and the defense stepped up. You look at it and you say, yeah, would you have liked to not give up 31 points? Yeah, were there drives where you looked at it and you said, man, this defense is just struggling and struggling mightily. Yes. Yeah, there were times in that game where you looked at the defense and you're like, could you get a stop, please? But at the end of the day, a lot of that loss, not all of it, but a lot of that loss falls on the shoulders of Mason Rudolph. A lot was made last week about, hey, Mason Rudolph, when he stepped in, he stepped up. I think J.J. Watt said it on the broadcast on Sunday. The Steelers are 8-4-1 when Mason Rudolph starts for them. He has been a good backup quarterback and a good fill-in quarterback for the Steelers his entire career. The problem was that wasn't Steelers Mason Rudolph that showed up on Sunday. That was Tennessee Titans Mason Rudolph that led the Titans, in large part, to the first overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. And it wasn't all his fault. I will put some of it on the play calling. It looked like Arthur Smith dusted off the old Russell Wilson play calls from last year, where it's either you're going to dump it off to the check down or you're just going to throw up a 50-50 ball. The middle of the field was nowhere to be found on the Steelers' offensive play scheme this week, which is a little concerning considering the Chicago Bears defense was down to their 5th and 6th string inside linebackers. And yet the Steelers, a team that is comprised of mainly tight ends in their passing attack, wasn't able to take advantage of that portion of the field, or refused is probably a better word, to take advantage of that part of the field. But it's not just the fact that you needed to just run the football and do dump offs. It's the fact that Mason Rudolph turned the ball over, that he didn't take care of the football. Because we talk about the Steelers defense and do they give up a lot of yards? Yes, but they did in this game what they've done in the 6 games that the Steelers have won this season. They forced big turnovers and they shut down the run. And when that happens, more often than not, the Steelers offense is set up for success in that game and should win that game. The only way that that gets completely, and I mean completely neutralized, is if your offense then goes back and turns the ball over more. And that's exactly what Mason Rudolph did. Fumbles the ball, throws an interception. It was a heck of a play by that Bears cornerback on the interception, but nonetheless, he throws an interception. 4th down, tush push. Did they get the first down on forward progress? Yes, but at the end of the day, it goes down in the history books as a turnover on downs. So the Steelers defense did a lot of what you expect the Steelers defense to do. They bent but didn't break in a lot of instances, but they also created a lot of 3 and outs in this game, which was a little out of character for the Steelers. So it just felt like the offense was not able to help out the defense in any way, shape, or form. And I know Mike Tomlin said at halftime that, hey, listen, the Bears have 14 points off of turnovers. Our defense needs to step up when our offense drops the ball. But it needs to go the other way too. Your offense needs to eventually figure it out. They ran the ball well against the Chicago Bears. The offensive line looked good against the Chicago Bears. The problem was they weren't making plays. In the fourth quarter, they went on that long touchdown drive to bring it to within one score. But what did JJ Watt say on the broadcast? And it was foreshadowing of what would eventually happen. Man, they're taking a lot of time to get down the field. Yeah, they're getting down the field. Yeah, it looks like they're going to score points, but they're eating a lot of clock up to get this first score. And what eventually ended up happening? The clock became a factor late in the game. Why? Because they weren't able to make a splash play on offense. The running game made one, and that was a fourth down trick play, essentially, when you lined up for the tush push, but instead Connor Hayward gave it to Kenneth Gainwell, and he went 50-some-odd yards down to the 1-yard line. The Steelers didn't have enough splash. They had to dink and dunk their way down the field, and that ended up handcuffing them and costing them this game. So the overall outlook, because of this loss, is very negative, and for good reason. 6 weeks ago, at the end of week 6 of this season, the Steelers were 4-1, the Ravens were 1-5. And just 6 weeks later, the Steelers are 6-5, and so too are the Baltimore Ravens, who are heating up, who have won 5 straight games, and who still have 2 games on deck against a Pittsburgh Steelers team that is now 2-4 in their last 6 games and currently sit outside of a playoff spot looking in. And because of that, I'm a little concerned about the outlook of the remainder of the season. I'm a little concerned that playoff football might not be in the Steelers' future in 2025 because the next 2 weeks become do or die. And last year, they didn't do well in those situations. We'll see if this year's any different because they have to take at least one of these next 2 games. Next week, at home, against the Buffalo Bills. Listen, the Bills have not been world beaters this year, but they still do have Superman, which makes that a scary proposition for a Steelers defense that could not stop the pass against Caleb Williams this week. And then you have a Baltimore game, the first of 2. It is a massive one. But if you cannot take, at the very least, one of these 2 games, you might end up 2 games out with 4 games to go in the AFC North, and who knows where you sit in the playoff standings if you lose the next 2. You need to win the next 2. Fortunately, it seems like Aaron Rodgers is coming back, so the Steelers won't have to rely on Mason Rudolph once again. But that only fixes so much because it's not like the offense was humming along smoothly before Aaron went down with that injury. Yes, it's obviously going to be better than what we saw out of Mason Rudolph. But if you look at the offense the last 3 weeks, which includes a full game of Aaron Rodgers, which includes almost a full half of Aaron Rodgers against the Bengals, the Steelers' offense has only put up 17 points per game. Last week, they scored 34, but they were aided by 2 defensive touchdowns. This past weekend against the Bears, 28 points on the scorecard, but 7 of them come from TJ Watt and Nick Herbig on the strip sack. 17 points per game over the last 3 games. Only 204 passing yards per game. Yeah, the Steelers' rush offense has been very good. 185 yards against Chicago, 111 yards against Cincinnati. They've ran the ball effectively. They've ran the ball well. But the other issue when you're running the ball that way and have no passing game whatsoever is the Steelers don't have any home run hitters right now at the running back position. Jalen's done it in the past. He hasn't done it this year. Kenneth Gainwell had that great 4th down conversion against Chicago, but that is the exception and not the rule. The Steelers need to find some offensive spark. Maybe Aaron Rodgers comes back and they look like they did early in the season. But that's going to be something that is a need, not just a hope. And right now it feels more like a hope. And the hope is starting to fade when it comes to Steelers fans hoping for a playoff run, let alone, a playoff appearance, let alone a playoff run. It's going to be a very important week here as they get ready for the Bills, and another important week following that against the Baltimore Ravens. Steelers outside of a playoff spot after week 12. Man, how far they have fallen in such a quick time here over the last 6 weeks. They have some time to get it back together. That is the positive. That is the silver lining, is the season is not over. There is still 6 games to go to figure it out, to put yourself back in position, and to get back on top. You just have to execute. You just have to put your foot in the ground and turn things around, because if not, we're going to be sitting back and watching another season of playoffs with no Pittsburgh Steelers. But that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, if you like this content, to like, share, subscribe to my channel at Nick Belsky on YouTube. But that's it for this one. We'll see you guys next time.